Welcome to Comic Tropes. I'm your host, Chris. Folks, it's the end of the year. It's time to celebrate. And what better way to celebrate than to talk about the best comics of 2023. Alright, enough of all that tomfoolery and chicanery. Look at that, I got so excited I knocked my own glasses off. Folks, I've got my annual top 10 list. This is pretty casual and informal. Keep in mind, I am just one person, so this is less a definitive list of the absolute best comics out there than my personal opinion of, out of all the comics I've read this year, the 10 that I would most like to recommend to all of you. That said, I'd still love to hear your thoughts and opinions in the comments below of what you thought the best comics of the past year were. Without any further ado, let's get into my top 10 list, starting with number 10. Number 10, Fantastic Four. Fantastic Four at number 10. Well, I guess if I put some more thought into this, that should have been number 4. But anyway, I was kind of surprised to see Fantastic Four, just a regular superhero comic, make it into my top 10 list, but there's a special reason for that. Writer Ryan North has decided to sort of reboot this run with an idea towards creating single-issue stories, or at most, 2-issue long stories. So we're really starting at a nice level set and getting to know these characters as compared to diving into all sorts of deep continuity or trying to build something way more epic than what's gone before. And Fantastic Four has a lot of good runs. You know, you've got your Lee Kirby era, you've got your John Byrne era, you've got somebody like, I really liked Walt Simonson's era, but Ryan North, and to be fair, let's credit Eben Coelho as the artist as well, are really focusing on the family element and the scientific mystery elements of Fantastic Four. And I think it's good to hang it on something that simple. Every issue basically gives you a scientific mystery. Ryan North is finding new and creative ways for the Fantastic Four to use their powers either individually or together. And it really highlights their intelligence, the fact that they are explorers and scientists as well as a family. So there is some family drama that I really found relatable and interesting and helped humanize these characters that are doing larger than life stuff. If you need a good example of what I'm talking about with a single issue mystery, I really recommend issue number 10 especially. In that one, we've basically got this alien civilization where they're on an incredibly long trip, so they're all in stasis. One person is alive per generation to pilot the ship, and each of them seems to encounter the Fantastic Four briefly in a very horrifying way. As for why, well, that's the mystery, and I'll let you decide for yourself if it's any good. But I really am enjoying this as a comic book run. It's easy to jump in, get a great story, and feel like you got a full story by the time you finish the final page. Number 9. Miracleman. It was about 25 years ago that writer Neil Gaiman and artist Mark Buckingham began a run on Miracleman, following Alan Moore. But it was cut short, and I'm not going to get into the whole history of that. That's really an episode in and of itself. What's important is that last year, they were finally able to tell their story. And where so much time has passed, Mark Buckingham actually redid all of his artwork, and some of the fascinating stuff about the early issues in this new run, which is subtitled The Silver Age, is that you actually get to see the current art, you read the story, and then at the back there is the original art, and you get to see the choices that an artist is making with these decades of time to improve and hone their craft. Just beautiful storytelling. Looks fantastic. Something interesting to note about Miracleman: The Silver Age is that while it has superheroes, it really is more of a sci-fi story. It's got an outsider coming into a supposed utopian society, and it shows that our world, as messed up as it is, still gives us free will, and how in a lot of ways that can be preferable to a supposed perfect society where everything is dictated and there's no choice in the matter. So that's kind of fascinating to look at. It's really a beautiful story. I'm so excited that Miracleman was able to come back and continue in this way. Number 8, Animal Pound. Coming in just as the year ends, writer Tom King and artist Peter Gross give us Animal Pound. Just the first issue's out. I'm already fascinated. This is an update on George Orwell's famous Animal Farm, and that is an ambitious subject to tackle. You know, there's some hubris going on there that you think, hey, I can update and potentially improve this. But they are doing a few things differently. First of all, Orwell's Animal Farm took place on a farm, and it was really about the dangers of communism. We're in a different era now. This takes place in an animal shelter in the modern day and seems to be hinting at, because there's only one issue out, that's why I say hinting at, it seems to be hinting at the dangers of letting our own democracy get away from us. The problems that can be inherent with governing ourselves if we're not careful and that we don't really keep our eyes on our politicians. Plus, this deals with pets, cats, dogs, and rabbits, and I think that there's just automatically going to be an emotional connection to those animals. So this is not a fun story. This is pretty somber stuff. We automatically care about these animals. We don't want to see them get hurt or hurt each other. This is a story ultimately about freedom, freedom of choice, freedom to rule yourself, freedom from oppression and slavery. And it's heartbreaking just to think of animals thinking in those terms. But it is an interesting way to look at government. It's a serious issue. Peter Gross's art is gorgeous. The animals look very realistic, but they're still dynamic. It's not stiff at all. It really makes it relatable and human, which is kind of ironic when you think that we are, of course, following animals. Number 7, Human Target. Yeah, second book in a row by Tom King. What can I say? This year especially really did make me appreciate Tom King's writing. So your mileage may vary there, but I think he's doing a lot of interesting things in limited series that allow us to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Human Target is a really interesting murder mystery. Really, that's the framework on which we're hanging a doomed love story. So I felt that it was more of a romantic comedy, although it's framed investigating a murder mystery. But here's the thing. The pacing isn't honestly perfect for this. It isn't perfect. It's interesting. The dialogue is great. The characterizations are great. What really sells this is Greg Smallwood's artwork. Some of the best of his career. Gorgeous, gorgeous artwork. Really reminds you of a lot of that 60s advertising, American advertising, the height of, Americana and stuff. It was beautiful artwork in and of itself. And there's a lot of that placed on these characters, the Human Target himself, ICE, and a lot of the other Justice League International members. Every character looks different. Every character is expressive, and I don't know. I've never seen a character like Ice, this, innocent, young ingenue who's in over his head, look more beautiful. And it's just some gorgeous artwork. So I'm really telling you that while the story's good, you'd be left very cold if you were reading a bad story. It's the art that makes this fall into my top 10. Number 6, Riddler Year One. Riddler Year One, a stunning companion piece to Matt Reeves' movie, The Batman. Written by the actor who played the Riddler in that movie, Paul Dano. And normally I'm like, look, it's cool if celebrities love comics. Maybe they even have an interesting idea. A lot of times they'll need a co-writer or something. Well, no, not in this case. In this case, Paul Dano wrote this book, and it really fleshes out his character in a fascinating way that actually elevates the movie. The Riddler is an absolutely fascinating character here. Gotham City itself is basically a character that corrupts and beats down this man who's uncovering the corruption of Gotham City. You see that he has good intentions. Paul Dano apparently wrote a character study for himself so that he could really believe in his own character, and he decided to write it as a comic book script as compared to just a journal or something like that. And eventually some editors saw it and they were like, this is good, let's actually turn it into a comic. And thank God they did. It is sincerely just a great, great corruption thriller. And the artwork by Steven Subich, I might be mispronouncing his name, it's good. It's a little more impressionistic and angular and dark, but that really helps with the mood, the tone, and really selling just how bleak and dark this city can be and how much it can ruin people. But I sincerely think that while it's a great comic in and of itself, reading this, it just made the movie and my appreciation of the movie increase that much more. I think that that's a pretty rare feat. I think Riddler Year One is something special. Number 5, Local Man. Tim Seeley and Tony Fleecs are probably best known as writers in comics, but they're also artists, and they're working together to write and draw Local Man, which is about a superhero that goes through something shameful. He's kicked off of his team called Third Gen, and this guy, Crossjack, has to basically retreat to small-town America to live with his parents. He's embarrassed, ashamed, and that's just the beginning of a mystery. A mystery to like uncover all sorts of secrets from his former team and of his town. But what's best about this is that this uses Image Comics history as its playground. It's published through Image, and it's specifically set in that vaguely shared 90s Image universe. So this is a world where the Wildcats exist, for instance, and the team that Crossjack is on, it definitely plays into a lot of those tropes and then finds ways to subvert them and find a way to make things grounded. But there's always a main story set in the modern day with Jack living with his parents, dealing with all sorts of weird bullshit. And then there's also a backup story set somewhere in Crossjack's past that really plays into all of the 90s Image artistic excess, but finds a way to help us understand the character better as well. It's just an amazing meta commentary on Image Comics itself, but with a really likable, flawed protagonist at its heart. A guy who is essentially something close to, say, Hawkeye. He's a guy who can find the potential in any object and make it dangerous. So, he can throw with perfect accuracy a lot of the time. That's what it amounts to. But he's also just a normal guy. He does not have flight or super strength on top of that. So he can get in over his head when he deals with other superpowered beings. Just a total surprise. And I'm so glad I found it. A great balance of humor, action, and intrigue. Number 4, Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman, what a true surprise. A character I like okay, but has never necessarily been my personal favorite. This run is fantastic, and it is, yes, the third book written by Tom King. I am not trying to pick favorites here. He's had a good year. The cool thing about this Wonder Woman run, beyond the incredible artwork by Daniel Sampere, is that it's a conspiracy thriller. So take, the best stuff of X-Files and put Wonder Woman into it. Wonder Woman is trying to figure out a mystery where an Amazon has killed a bunch of men, and therefore it gave the US justification to kick Amazons out of the country and hunt Wonder Woman down. So she's a superhero on the run, like classic 1970s Incredible Hulk. Wonder Woman herself comes across really interesting. She's incredibly powerful, incredibly capable, royal, beautiful, insanely compassionate. Really, you can see the frustration in her, but she gives people every inch that she can to try to work things out. And if that doesn't go well, she's more than capable of backing things up in a fight. I really like the most recent issue 4, where even while being hunted, she took some time out to give a dying child a beautiful day, sort of a make-a-wish type thing. Daniel Sampere's artwork is intricate, it's highly detailed, but it's remarkably consistent. I feel like this is the most beautiful Wonder Woman has ever looked, but she also looks powerful, and the action and stuff is very dynamic. It is not stiff or overly referenced at all. So it's just this great combination of a cool new premise for the character, some of it the best art that it's had, and that is saying something when people like George Perez have worked on Wonder Woman. I did like his run quite a bit. This is just something that I'm eating right up. I love it. It also gives her a new enemy that's a cool opposite, where it's this creepy old man called the Sovereign who seems to be the secret king of the United States, and he does that with the power of the lasso of lies. So very much an opposite to Wonder Woman's lasso of truth. I don't know exactly where it's going, and that's part of the fun. It's surprising me every issue. I need that in a superhero book. I really recommend it. Number 3, Where the Body Was. So, Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips, I have said before, they are my favorite team in comics. And yeah, this is number 3, not number 1. But I love these folks. They can do no wrong. I think that they can do crime fiction standing on their heads, which is what made this book a pleasant surprise. Yes, it's framed as though it's a murder mystery, but really, that is just the structure to tell a story about first loves, and often how they're imperfect. So this is also set in the 80s, a time when Ed Brubaker, the writer, was growing up. It's set in a suburb in America, so it's very relatable stuff, especially to somebody like me that's a little older. You know, your mileage there may vary, totally get that. But it's got a great crime thriller, and yet it's not necessarily quite as dark as some of their other stuff, like books like Criminal or Pulp, or even, what was it, Nightbreed or something like that came out earlier this year, which was good. Just this gives us something a little bit different because the romance is very relatable and believable. It isn't about a femme fatale tricking a private eye or anything like that. It's real people in a suburb. It's got a wide cast of characters, and you could probably find a little bit of yourself in each of them, and you're also going to be wondering, can I trust any of these characters, or is one of them somehow a murderer? Really beautiful looking and fun to read book. You will go through this so fast. I'm so happy that this team is at a point where they just put out a full story all at once instead of the floppies. It's just a very satisfying way to read a story. Love it. Number 2, Transformers. This is probably the biggest surprise for me, folks, but yes, a licensed book is my number 2 pick of the year. I loved Transformers growing up. Haven't really been into them as much as an adult, but I do love Daniel Warren Johnson. He's the writer and artist here, and boy does he make this book fun. If I just need to boil it down to one word to describe why I'm recommending this book, fun. But if you'll allow me to get a little bit more in detail, it reads with interesting characters and it looks gorgeous. The pacing is fantastic. The action scenes know exactly when to pull out things like a 2-page spread to emphasize a big story beat. Where else but with giant robots could you come across an action scene where the character, in a move of desperation, rips off his own arm and uses it as a flail against his opponent? That's unique, that's exciting, that's unexpected. Also unexpected, at least if you didn't know Daniel Warren Johnson, all the pro wrestling moves. Have you ever wanted to see Optimus Prime pick up, Skywarp and pull off a burning hammer on him? Do you want to see suplexes and stuff like that with robots? Well, I'll tell you something. Even if you didn't think you did, you do. Because it really sells an incredible amount of impact and also the scale of these characters. It finds a way to make the characters likable. That's why the action works, is because the characters are interesting and likable. The human characters, Spike, Carly, sure, I like them. It's a new take on them. It's great. What I love the most is Optimus Prime himself. This is not the Optimus Prime that we saw in the live-action movies. Unfortunately, that was never really the Optimus Prime I wanted to see. The Optimus Prime I know came from those original cartoons in the 80s, and even the file card on the back of his toy, where he would say, "Freedom is the right of all sentient beings." This Optimus Prime is compassionate and loving, and he wants to protect those that are weaker than him. He feels that that's a responsibility. I think that that's pretty noble and heroic. I cannot recommend this title enough. It is a blast. Do yourself a favor and check it out. Honorable mentions. There's so many great books out this year, and I just want to shout some of them out. You know, it would be very easy to list things like Daredevil, Saga, Radiant Black, The Sacrificers. What else am I seeing up here? World's Finest, The Enfield Gang Massacre, Sirens of the City by Joanne Sterer and Carrie Randolph. Oh, and if I look at manga, stuff like Spy Family or what else? Asadora, great books. Easily, I could have reshuffled my list a little and put some of those in there. There's been tons of great books. Again, I'd love to hear some of your recommendations below, but let's go with my number one pick. Number one, Monica. A new Daniel Clowes book is always going to be interesting. Daniel Clowes, the guy who you may know from things like Ghost World. Boy, does he make interesting comics, and Monica is no exception. This is a big, thick book about an ordinary woman, Monica, who is struggling to find meaning in her life. She believes that she is special, and she tries to find a way to prove that she's special. We follow her throughout her life. Is she special because of her family situation where her mother basically abandoned her at a very young age? Is she special because of her creativity and her business acumen when she starts her own company? She joins a cult. It goes through so many different eras of her life. And ultimately, she seems to come to the conclusion that she's willing to accept that maybe she's not so special. And then, just to be clear, the story totally upends things in the final panel and the back interior covers. I won't show you that. What I will say is Clowes is a master storyteller. Very interesting story about this woman's life. It reads very easily. Some of the stuff seemed a little incongruous to me at first. We would follow a side story of something that was seemingly unrelated. But by the end, I realized Monica is a storyteller, and these are likely her stories, which we can tell if we look really closely because the background paper is slightly darker yellow than her stories, which are a bright white. I think that that's an indication, and yet there are thematic moments that are happening in these stories that help us understand her life, because here's the other thing. She's a storyteller, and Monica is telling this story. She's an unreliable narrator. We know that because the first chapter ends with her saying that she never saw her mother again and that she lived a happy life. But then we learn that, no, she had some miserable stuff go on in her life. She was in a coma for years, and she absolutely finds her parents. It's just crazy how many ups and downs emotionally this book takes you through. And when I talk about the emotions, here's the thing with the Daniel Clowes book you need to know going in. He is very comfortable giving you some awkward characters that go through some really cringy stuff, and it can seem a little cold and distant, right? He keeps you at arm's length from his characters in a lot of ways. But they're very relatable when they go through those moments. We're like, oh, I've had awkward, terrible things like that happen to me. So even though it's sort of awkward, you're like, you know what? I could see myself in that, and it's nice to know that this is a shared experience, something that other human beings go through. So as weird and off-putting as some of the moments can be, there's also something that makes you feel a little better about yourself. I could go into a lot more, but I'd have to spoil things. So I'm going to leave it there and just say I truly recommend Monica. It was a book that at first I was like, ooh, this is a little rough. And I could not stop thinking about it afterwards. So there we go. That's my top 10 list. Was not easy to put together. I'm totally open to being argued or debated or discussed with as to what else should have been in that list. Please let me know. And I just want to say before we start the new year, thank you for watching this show. Thank you if you've ever, left a comment, hit the like button, hit subscribe. That stuff all really helps. And a huge thank you to my supporters on both YouTube and Patreon. Wouldn't have been able to do this without you. That's the God's honest truth. And I will leave it there. I'll be back soon with another episode. You'll probably see me in the credits if you watch to the end. But until I see you next time, keep reading comics. Ready? Oh. Well, folks, I just shot off confetti, but I shot it downwards. So that wasn't too exciting. Whoops. Let's just hope 2024 is good to all of us. 2023 has been probably tough for a lot of us in many ways as we navigate what becomes the new normal. That said, I see a lot of promising things on the horizon for comics. I'm curious to see what trends you see coming out, but I definitely see an increasing popularity in manga, an increasing popularity in all ages books, and an increasing popularity in digital comics, reading with a digital reader. There's no question those are all things that will be on the rise. I don't anticipate in 2024 we'll see any big shifts, though, away from traditional floppy superhero type comics or the specialty comic book stores. But I do hope that at some point retailers, publishers, distributors, and readers can start having some really good, honest, open conversations to try to figure out if there are some better ways that we can get comic books out there to a wider audience in a more efficient or more affordable way. Try to make sure that there's something out there for everybody. Because at the end of the day, I personally just love the medium more than anything else, I have a nostalgic affection for some characters like Spider-Man or Superman, but mostly I follow creators at this point, and I'm curious to see what different writers and artists do, and I want them to have the biggest audience possible. Thank you so much for following me this year. I can't wait to bring you more content next year. My pledge to you, gonna try to up the overall quality, and we'll see if I can do something creative in the meantime. All right, folks. Thanks so much. Bye.